Welcome to another edition of Interruptions. My next guest today, we have a treat. My next guest is one of the original members of the group Take Six. He has 5 Grammys. He has worked with people like Quincy Jones, Whitney Houston, Donald Summers. He has 2 Stellar Awards. He has worked on films such as Honey, The Preacher's Wife, and The Wedding Planner. If you don't know who I'm talking about Mr. Mervyn Warren. How you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you very much.
Did I pronounce that right? Is it Mervyn or Marvin? Is it
Mervyn. Mervyn.
Mervyn? Okay, it is Mervyn.
It
Okay,
is. Thank
you
you.
know how we do sometimes.
Yes, yes. Those are all variations of the name Merlin.
Okay.
They all mean magician. Mervyn, Marvin, Melvin.
Wow.
Mean magician.
Well, listen, the stuff you've been doing in music, you've been doing some magical work, and so it fits and suits you well.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm pretty sure where you're from, you don't hear a name like that much from where you're from.
You mean the name Mervyn?
Yes.
It is not a common name in the United States. My dad's name is Mervyn.
Okay.
But it is not common here. It's more common, believe it or not, in England, in the UK.
I can believe that. I can believe
It
that.
is, but less so in the States.
Less so in the state. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for blessing us with your presence. My first question that I have for you today is, how did Take Six get started? What was that process like? How did that come about?
Well, when Take Six started, I was about 16 years old, and I had been a musician in the area. This was in Huntsville, Alabama. I grew up playing the piano, primarily playing the piano more than singing.
Okay.
But I had been doing that since I was 4 or 5 years old. And I had had various groups. I had often performed with Mark Kibble, who was another member.
Yes.
Mark is
Yes.
still in the group. And Mark and I had known each other since we were about 11 or 12 and had been doing things musically. So that's a little bit of the prehistory.
Sure.
And then Mark and I we're about the same age, about a month apart. When we were about 16, we were in Huntsville, Alabama, which is where Oakwood College, now Oakwood University,
Okay.
is located. It's an HBCU.
Okay.
And there was a lot of musical groups at Oakwood. Later on, Brian McKnight came out of Oakwood, Clifton
Okay.
Davis, a lot of different people. And Claude McKnight, who is a member of Take Six, heard 4 guys harmonizing
Okay.
in the gymnasium in the bathroom. And that sounds funny, but the bathroom had a lot of tile, and it was a great place to sing.
Okay. For the acoustics.
Yeah, for the acoustics, exactly. So
Right.
people would go down there and rehearse. People would literally just have their rehearsals. If it was an acapella group, they would go down there and rehearse because the acoustics were so nice. Claude
Right.
McKnight heard 4 guys singing, and Claude ended up joining that group. I'm sorry, Claude was one of the 4. This is a long time ago.
I got you.
I'm 56 now, so this was literally 40 years ago. Claude was one of the 4.
Okay.
Claude was one of the 4 who were singing, and it was Mark who heard those 4 singing and thought, oh, I like these guys. And Mark sort of ended up singing with them and sort of adding a little bit. And then Mark said to these guys, hey, we got to bring my boy Mervyn also.
Okay.
Mark became number 5. I became number 6.
Wow.
And that's how the group sort of started. And then Mark primarily took over as the primary arranger for that group.
Sure.
I had another group that I was working with called A Special Blend at the time. But Mark was doing most of the arrangements for Take Six. The name of the group at that time was Alliance.
Okay.
It wasn't until several years later, when we got our record deal with Warner Brothers, that the name changed to Take Six.
Oh, well, that segue perfectly into one of my questions. So I'm gonna go out of order. But
Okay.
when you guys got together, and like you said, Warner Brothers, and you were gonna do what prompted you guys to say, let's do it just a cappella, no, no music? Because you have some groups, they'll sing, and then you get to the bridge, you fade out the music, they harmonize, but you
Uh-huh.
guys chose to. I mean, man, you guys sound just sometimes, man, I couldn't even take it because you guys harmony was so tight. It was ridiculous. So what prompted you guys to just do straight a cappella?
Well, that's what it always was. It wasn't even a
Okay.
conscious decision of, hey, we're going to do this. That particular group was always an a cappella group. And again, at the time when Mark heard those four guys singing in the bathroom, one of which was Claude, back in those days, there were already a lot of a cappella groups at that school.
Okay.
That was part of the tradition there. And so, there would be quartets, sometimes trios, but mainly
Sure.
quartets, quintets, sextets. There were all of these different choirs. There were always different sized groups, even though we had pianos and organs around.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, it was just sort of easy sometimes to get some voices together and harmonize, or someone would work out an arrangement and teach it. So Take Six, or formerly Alliance, was always an a cappella group, and that's the group that was signed to Warner Brothers. And it wasn't a decision, we're going to drop the instruments, the non-vocal instruments. That's just the way. In fact, that's why we were signed, because they thought we were so unique. And
Wow.
there was no reason to change that. They liked what they heard, and so that's what we stuck with.
Yeah, so you answered. I was about to ask you that question, but you answered it. So they liked the fact that it was a cappella, and that's why it was sound, because you guys didn't sound like anything else at that
It
time.
was unique. Yeah, but they signed us. They signed us because it was a unique sound. Absolutely.
Now, this question here, I really don't have to ask, but I'm going to ask it because I want you to just kind of elaborate how it worked to your benefit. But
Okay.
how does your master's degree in music serve you today?
Oh, that's a really good question. um, well, it probably serves me in ways that allow me to draw upon the things that I learned. I mean, it's
Sure.
sort of a dual-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
because when I applied for that master's degree, it's so funny because I remember them being a little skeptical about my abilities.
Mm.
Um, but I had already done some recording, and I gave them some of the things that I had done as a teenager. And once they heard those recordings and saw what I was able to do, they were like, "Oh, well, you obviously don't need arranging 101 or 102. We're going to put you in 103. In fact, I might have even skipped 103. They might have just put me in 201. I
Okay.
think I skipped the whole first year because once
Okay.
they saw what I was already doing, they said, "Okay, well, we don't need to teach you the basics. You already know much more than the basics."
Sure.
And so I did, but I still did this 2-year master's degree program, and I did learn a lot. I mean, and Cedric Dent from Take Six,
Right.
he also has left the group, but the two of us were in this master's program together. And although we were already advanced in some ways, there's always something to learn. I mean, I'm
Sure.
still learning to this day, and so I draw upon some of that stuff, that I learned. I mean, I'll never forget the instructor there, who I literally just a couple of days ago, someone said that he just passed away in his
Oh,
90s.
wow.
His name was Steve Sample.
Okay.
And I'll never forget it. One of his big concepts
Mm-hmm.
for arrangers was something he called conservation of ideas. Basically, don't put the kitchen sink in every song. That was his thing.
Okay.
You don't have to put every single idea that you come up with
Oh,
in every
okay.
song.
Okay.
Take a
Okay.
step back and give the Now, arguably, Take Six is not known for doing easy arrangements.
No. No. No.
I can't say that we always took that, but depending on the type of project, I've done arrangements for a lot of other people over the years, and I think about that sometimes. When I'm sitting here and I'm working on my arrangements, I
Mm-hmm.
think, maybe I'll use this idea and this idea. I don't have to use that one. Maybe that's a little too much. Let me pull
Okay.
back and give the listener a break. It's just little things like that, or techniques that he taught us about orchestration, those sort of things. You know, you draw upon all of those things,
Sure.
you know, as we work. And so I don't ever get I've never gotten a job because I have a master's degree. You know,
Sure.
that's not required in the music industry, but I certainly do use things that I learned during those.
The reason I asked that question because with everything you've been able to accomplish
Mhm.
thus far, and I know you got many more things to do.
So let's hope
Uh,
so.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You got plenty left in you. I asked that because do you think sometimes that like you say, the lessons and the things that you learn, you know, in that class, in those classes, that sometimes today new artists may sometimes try to take a shortcut and don't realize that the things that like you said you can learn. It may not serve you like today, far as whatever you're doing,
Mhm.
but you could come up with a unique style, unique arrangement, just different things. So education can still be helpful.
Absolutely, it absolutely can. And Yeah, I mean, because there are just things, you know, I remember studying, I mean, there are actually rules of writing harmony, you know,
Okay.
and in music, you know, and in art in general, rules are
Sure.
made to be broken, I guess.
Yes.
But if you sort of learn, you know, you learn to write the way Bach wrote, or you learn to write the way
Okay.
Mozart wrote. And those things, just learning those, even if you don't use that specifically, just learning those contours. It's like being an architect. If you study architecture, you're going
Hmm.
to learn Roman architecture and you're going to learn Greek architecture. You're just going
Sure.
to learn the foundations, and then you can go and design some crazy building that you want to build.
Right.
But the foundations that have lasted for hundreds of years, those things help you. Even if you're doing something much more
Different.
contemporary. So that's sort of an analogy. There are
Yeah.
always things to be learned and to draw upon.
Well, I appreciate that because I was always fascinated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what prompted you to leave, you know, Take Six after, was it the first album?
It's the second album. It's the
After the
second
second,
album.
okay. What prompted you?
Well, you know, I I had always wanted to work in the music industry and ultimately the film industry.
Okay.
Um, and after Take Six, released that first album and worked with so many artists and became so busy. It was sort of a dual-edged sword. We were having a great time and we were traveling all over the world and lots of things were happening. But my phone was ringing and people were saying, "Oh, can you do an arrangement for this? Or can you produce this group? Or can you do this? Can you do that?" And Take Six was so busy most of the time that I was
Right.
turning down these offers. Now, a lot of people would say, well, who cares? You were busy with Take Six. That's true. But I still wanted that creative outlet. You
Sure.
know, with Take Six, we would make an album, like say that first album, we spent a few months making that album. And then you spend a year touring around singing those songs, which
Right.
was fun, but it wasn't to me as fun as being creative and creating more new things. And so I juggled that for a while, but it
Sure.
just got to the point where I wanted to pursue some of those other things a
Sure.
little bit more
Right.
than my desire to stay with the group. And it was a hard decision. It was a very hard decision, but ultimately I decided to step away so that I could pursue those other things, including film and especially film.
Yes.
And that's primarily why I stepped away so that I could pursue those
Yeah,
other
you
options.
scored a lot of films.
I've scored a number of films,
I
yeah.
tell you, I tell you what. I know you glad that when you made that decision, as far as you made it in that time frame, because
Uh-huh.
in this new age here with social media, I can see the headline. Oh, Marvin, he left Take Six. What? Why did he leave Take Six? Is there something going on? So, so
Yeah, yeah. In fact, even then, way before social media, everyone assumed because nobody leaves a group like that. Generally speaking, it's rare, and everyone assumed that I was when the word got out that I had
mm,
left. Everyone assumed I left to go solo. to have a solo career. That's usually what people do. And
Right,
and I
right.
was like, no, I'm not trying to do a solo album. I want to produce. I want to write. I want to do other stuff. But that's what everyone assumed for a while. That people kept saying, well, when is your solo album coming? No, that's not why I left the group. So yeah,
And that's why I said it was great. I mean, far as sometimes you got to be thankful for the time frame you're born in,
uh-huh,
because you don't get, even though that was one of the speculations, but you
uh-huh.
don't get this whole, what did he get? You know how people try to create stuff. Did he
Oh yeah,
not get along with Knight? Did he
right,
not? That with him and Mark, or who was trying to be the leader? All
right,
those different things. You didn't
sure,
have to, what people deal with today. So.
right,
And it was funny because we, as a fan, you sitting back and like, man, he left the group, and so you're trying to figure out what's going on, and then I start seeing your name on, movie scores, producing, arranging
hmm,
different albums. Then it dawns on you know what? That's why he left. He
right,
he wanted to be more behind the scene
right,
than in front. And
right,
so that's a testament to you, because especially today, you got a lot of people want to be in front.
right.
They want to be in front of the camera.
That's very true. That is very
So um how and I went out of order, so I want to ask you this question before I forget.
okay.
But what was the feeling like, that first album? Because that first album, man, was like, that was wow. That's all I can say. How what was the feeling like for you and the guys?
Well, it was an amazing feeling. But it's funny, I have to put a little asterisk behind it
Hmm.
because what's interesting is we actually had recorded an album in college. We recorded an album in college. We didn't have a big budget, but we pretty much did. That's when we were called Alliance.
Okay.
And I think probably 7 of the songs that ended up on the Take Six album we had already recorded once before.
Wow.
Now that was never a big release. I think maybe there are about 500 of those albums. It's sort of a collector's item for some people. I have a couple in my closet around the corner. But so we knew what it was like, and of course back then, we're talking about LPs.
Right.
So we knew what it was like to hold an LP in your hands and go, "Wow, this is our music." But it was the first time that we had done it for a major label, and to know that, oh, this thing is going to be in every store
Yeah.
across the country and even around the world. People are going to be able to get this. So just a much bigger version of what we had experienced on a smaller scale. It's like, wow, and you turn over that thing and you see the Reprise logo, which was a division of Warner Brothers, and it's like, oh wow, so.
Yeah.
Um, but we didn't have a lot of time to just to sit and sort of bask in that, because Warner Brothers was like, okay, we're getting on the road, excuse me, and the phone was ringing, and then it was just a whirlwind
Sure.
of touring and all of that kind of thing. So it was a very exciting time, very exciting.
Baby Sound. That's good, because I loved that album, man. And what was crazy was when we heard "Mary Don't You Weep,"
Hmm.
and it was like, okay, yeah, man, these brothers sick. But then when I heard "Spread Love," it was a wrap. That was it. Okay, they're gone. They're gone. They're not just a gospel group. They're gone. They're gone.
Right.
It's certain songs that
Right.
just propel you into the stratosphere, and then you're gone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that was and that's one of the new songs. That's one of the songs that was not on the Alliance album.
Okay.
There were at least 2 or 3, Spread Love and Gold Mine and maybe one
Yeah.
or 2 others that we wrote new for that
Sure.
for the Warner Brothers album. And we wanted a broad appeal, and we wanted, and it's funny because, you may or may not know this, but we originally, well, the way we got that record deal was our
Okay.
manager at the time, Gail Hamilton, set up a showcase for us
Uh huh.
at a coffee shop in Nashville, and she invited all the Christian labels to
Okay.
come and hear us.
Okay.
And I think some of them showed up. We didn't know, we didn't know. I mean, there were definitely people in the audience. I mean, it was definitely a nice little audience there.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't know who was who. But but the only phone call we got in terms of signing us was Warner Brothers, which was
Wow.
not a Christian label.
Correct.
So Warner Brothers was, they're the ones who said, oh my God, these guys are amazing. And they're the ones who signed us. And then after the fact, those Christian labels were sort of kicking themselves, wishing that they had actually signed us.
It's because probably in that time frame, the gospel music sounded up a particular way, which was at that time was emerging, was contemporary gospel,
Right.
and and you guys
You
was
didn't
something
see,
fresh, something, and they probably at that time did not know what to do with
they
it.
didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. And it took, I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but it took, a big label like Warner Brothers with all the
Sure.
money they had. In fact, they admitted to us that they didn't even expect us to sell a lot of records. Warner Brothers admitted that, which actually was sort of a testament just to the way back in those days. It's different now, but back in
Right.
those days, they were making so much money with Madonna
Yep.
and Prince and huge artists that they had sort of a discretionary fund where they could sign some smaller artists, even if they didn't think, oh, they're going to sell millions of
Right.
copies. They had a little bit of discretion. And that's literally what they did. They just thought, you know what? We think these guys are amazing. We're going to sign them. Yeah, they probably aren't going to sell a lot. But Warner Brothers was such a huge corporation that they had that, they had some leeway to sign a
They could
small.
take the hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the Christian labels, for them, they were like, oh, we don't know what to do with these. We can't sign these guys. We don't know what to do with them. Warner Brothers was a little bit less concerned about selling 1 million copies,
Sure.
and they were sort of preserving art back in those days. They
Right.
wanted
Yeah.
to preserve what they heard.
What was it like when you got the opportunity to do some producing for Quincy Jones on the Back on the Block album? Because we're talking about Q now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know what? Yeah, I did. We did some vocals. We did some arranging on that record. And I think, did I do some strings on that one? That might have been his next one, Juke Joint. Yeah, I did some.
Okay. Yeah. Juke joint. Yeah.
Um, but it was a dream come true. I mean, because I had grown up listening to his stuff. I mean, everybody, the dude is just one of the, classic albums of all time. And to grow up listening to that stuff. And actually, even before we worked with him,
Mm-hmm.
I remember we lived in Nashville at the time, but they brought us out here to LA. We were in LA all the time doing stuff. And one day they took us up to Quincy's house.
Okay.
And we're sitting there and on his album, The Dude, there's that sculpture. There's
Mm-hmm.
it's like an African sculpture.
Right.
And we're sitting at his house, and on his coffee table, there is that sculpture, which we just sort of refer to as the dude. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm looking at that sculpture that I've stared at on that album cover
Right.
for years. There it is, right there in my face, and I'm sitting in his house. And it was just a trip. It was just a trip to think that someone of his stature was, I think I can say, blown away by what we did.
Right.
And trusted us enough to work on his album. And now over the years, I've done quite a bit of work for Quincy, even after, I've worked on his last 3 albums, and I have, produced projects for him. Sometimes he gets projects that he's unable to do, and he's referred people to me. So I've enjoyed a wonderful relationship with him. And, growing up, in Alabama, I never would have dreamed that I'd have relationships with people like that whose work
You're
I
right.
growing up.
What here's a fun question for you. What is the difference in producing the music and producing the artist?
And when you say the music, you mean the track behind
The
the
track,
vocal?
yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
No
What's
problem.
the difference? Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, I guess for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's if I'm producing a vocal artist,
Right.
more often than not, I'm asked to arrange and produce, which are technically 2 different jobs.
Correct.
Technically 2 different jobs, but since I do both, I'm often expected to do both, and I enjoy that. So if I'm arranging the instrumental bed for someone who's going to be singing,
Mm-hmm.
I guess my primary question is, how interesting can I make that? I want to make it. I want to make this track interesting
Mm-hmm.
for the listener, but not so crazy that it takes away from the vocalist.
Right.
So I'm kind of balancing that, and it varies with the vocalist. Now, if I'm working with someone like Whitney Houston, or if I was
Right.
working with someone like Whitney Houston, who was such a powerhouse vocalist,
Right.
you're a little bit less worried about what the track is doing because she's gonna blow no matter what.
Right.
And people who don't know what blow means, that means she's gonna sing her butt
she
off.
she gonna sing.
She's gonna sing. So I'm a little bit less worried about that. But maybe if I'm working with another artist, I won't mention a name, but just
Sure.
maybe someone who has a simpler delivery.
Mm-hmm.
You want to restrain the arrangement so that you don't overpower the singer. That's my point. And so those are things as an arranger and as a producer that I would keep in mind. What kind of singer am I working with?
Sure.
And I've been fortunate to work with fantastic singers for the most part. But that's certainly something that I would keep in mind. And then once I get to the vocal part, again, I think, well, it was funny working with Whitney because since I also sing,
right.
You know, I think people just sort of assume that, oh, somebody like Whitney Houston would walk up to the mic and that I would just let her do whatever she wants to do.
Right.
But no, I had some ideas for her.
Sure.
And since I'm a singer, instead of just describing it, I would hum them to her. And I think people who might have been in the room would be like, oh my God, he's got some nerve singing to Whitney Houston how he wants her to sing.
I dare you.
How dare you? But she didn't feel that way. She enjoyed it. It. But and I wasn't ripping her to shreds. I would just need like maybe hold this note a little bit longer.
Sure.
Or, you know, just little things like that. But I would sing it to her, and people were like, "Wow, look at that, singing to Whitney Houston." But we would have a good time, and I think because I'm a singer, it's kind of like when you hear movie directors,
right,
talking about the way they work with actors. If the directors are actors themselves, they know how to interact with those actors
sure,
in a way that, you know, and so it's the same thing with me. Since I'm a singer, I know how to interact with singers, even if my job is producing. I know how to interact with the singer and help them feel comfortable and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just asked that question, you know, just a little context is because you have producers who are, you know, just beat makers who can produce a track, right? And then you have someone like yourself. Yes, you can do that as well, but I also have to produce the artist, like you said, with some of the ideas, or hey, sing it this way, or you know, not so hard. Maybe the song requires a softness to it, and so that's producing and arranging as well. So
absolutely,
yeah, we that's why we named the show Interruptions, because we want to interrupt the thought process of what people actually think something is. And so I appreciate your candor for that answer. What was it like producing and work on one of my favorite gospel albums, which was the Handle Messiah's Soul Celebration album? I remember at the time, man, when that Tevin Campbell came out with that, I know my Redeemer lives. I was like, oh my God.
Now, it's funny you should ask me about that, and I will get back to your question, which was over the project in general. But it's funny that you should mention Tevin as it relates to the previous question.
Okay.
Tevin came into the studio, and the boy can sing. There's no question about that. But it was a different kind of, it was different from the kinds of songs he was used to singing. And he came into the studio and he was a little shy. And I couldn't believe it. I expected him to just come in and just do it. Because remember, he was singing on Quincy's album when he was like 12 or 13.
Yep.
And by this time, I think he was maybe 18. My math may be a little off. But it was several years later. He was a young man. He wasn't a little boy anymore. But he came in and he was a little shy. And I was just like, why is Tevin Campbell being shy? on the song. And he said, well, this song is different from the kind of songs I normally sing. So I actually had to coach him a little bit, not telling him how to sing, but I had to coach him a little bit and get him comfortable. And I was like, okay, well, let's take a little piece. Let's just take a little piece of the song.
Sure.
We took like 2 or 3 phrases at a time, and we would record 2 or 3 phrases. And then after we did that, then I said, now that you know the song, let's try it again all the way through. And by that time, he had learned it in a way. And if he sees this, I hope he's not offended by this. There's no slight. Everybody works differently.
Sure.
But it was just, and I just helped him as a singer. I helped him to sort of become more comfortable with it. And then he was able to kind of get out of his head and just sing the song.
It came across well, especially the ad-lib parts towards the end, and then
that was all him.
Yeah, and then he scaled up, and then I was like,
yes. Yeah.
I mean, then you had the Clark sisters, then you had Commission, the jazz group, the Yellow Jackets. I mean, and of course, Mr. Stevie Wonder. I cannot, leave him out. What was it like? Man,
it was a fantastic project, and I think there are about 15, 16 songs, and I produced about half of them myself because it was so much work. And Warner Brothers is on a schedule. I had to, some of those I had to allow other, or ask other producers to produce because I just didn't have time to do all of it. But I certainly did communicate with everyone, and I was an executive producer in those cases, sort of, communicating what we wanted. It was a lot of fun. Those arrangements, that was the kind of thing I did that I did growing up with Mark Kibble. And my late friend, Michael O. Jackson, who played the piano on Hallelujah, he was a monster.
Oh, okay. That was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to do that kind of stuff growing up. We would take these familiar songs and make them jazzy or make them R&B or make them gospel. We used to just do that for fun.
Right.
So that project to me was finally getting paid to do something that we had grown up doing. For fun. Yeah. So it was great to be able to take, Hallelujah, or I Know That My Redeemer Liveth, or pure, He Shall Purify, and just give it a treatment. And
Hey, man, and let me know if I'm wrong. But what was amazing, also, it seemed like you guys scaled Mr. Coley back a little bit because Daryl can go. Daryl could go.
No, we didn't. We didn't scale him back, and that's an excellent question, and I know what you mean. I think Daryl was. I'll never forget that session. I'll never forget that session because it was sort of a dream of mine to have Daryl and Vanessa go at it.
Yeah, buddy.
Because they had a similar.
I know what you mean. They can scale. They can run.
Yeah. And so I was like, let's get these two in the studio. Well, what happened was, and again, no slight to anybody.
Right.
Daryl, they came to the session. Daryl knew the song frontwards or backwards. Vanessa had not had as much time as Daryl, and she was like, oh, I need a little. So I think Daryl was perhaps maybe he took a half step back so that he didn't, so as not to overpower Vanessa.
I got you.
As she was getting up to speed.
Right.
And but oh man, I have outtakes from that thing where they were cutting the full. I mean.
Hey, listen. I heard it before I was supposed to hear it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I tell you, Quincy. So the church I was at that time, and I'm sure when he sees this, he remembers. So my pastor at the time, Jonathan Alvarado, which is now Bishop Alvarado.
That name sounds very familiar.
He played piano at different times. He would play for Daryl, and so we had just started a church, right? It was like just 19 young people and Bishop Alvarado, and so this was back in '93. So we were had to use the Lutheran Saints Church. We had to use their church at night, so we was having service at 7 p.m. So who walks in that he brings in? Daryl Coley. So Daryl's
Wow.
got this fly green suit on, and the joke, well, not the joke, but the thing was, if we knew Daryl was coming, just dress down. Don't even try to match him. Just dress down, because your best stuff is not going to even fly.
Right.
And so we had service, right? So it was after service, and Daryl said, hey, "Come to y'all. Got to come to the car. Y'all got to hear this app." And so he's now, you know, this back in the day. Now he had
Yeah.
a cassette.
Cassette. Sure.
So you know this back in the day. He had a cassette, and I tell you what was funny. He went straight to My Redeemer. He went straight to
Oh
that
wow.
song.
He said that before.
He said,
Okay.
man, Tevin, man, y'all got to hear. And we sat outside in the parking lot for another hour
Wow.
hearing the whole album.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
when that album came out, there was no question to go get the CD. And I already heard it.
Wow, that's amazing.
That
Man,
was a testament to the work you've done. So my
well,
final
thank
question for you is, what makes Marvin happy?
you. Makes me happy. Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, let's see. Well, the obvious answer is music. I love music, but I
Sure.
like a lot of things. You know, I love film. I love film as an art form. I love art. I'm in my house here. This room doesn't have well, this has posters and stuff, but I love
Right.
art. I have a lot of art in my house. Um, and you know what I think, and all of that sort of boils down to creativity. I enjoy things that people make, whether it's something to listen to or something
Sure.
to look at. Um, I'm really fascinated by creativity. I'm also fascinated by nature, but um, those are some of the things that make me happy. I love traveling. Of course, we're all sort of sticking around at home.
Sure.
I'm not doing anything right now because of the pandemic, and let's hope that we get past that all soon. But you know, I'm happy that I've been able to make a living doing as I said, what I've been doing since I was a
Sure.
kid, and not everybody gets to do that. So
That's
I
true.
feel privileged in that sense, and I'm looking forward, you know, hopefully to creating a lot more stuff that maybe people will enjoy.
Well, I thank you for coming on the show. And if you don't mind, there's
Uh
just,
huh.
if you don't mind,
Uh huh.
I know two independent filmmakers who just released some stuff,
Okay.
and I know probably next year. Like one of the guys is Antoine Allen.
Okay.
If you go to ABFF, his movie Lola just released,
Okay.
and I know he's going to do like a spinoff of it. I mean, a part two, I should say,
Uh huh.
next year. And
Uh huh.
man, a guy like you know, far as scoring, the music,
Yeah.
arrangement, listen, and then
Hey, I'm open, man. I'm open. You hook us up. Hook us up.
all right, and then the other one was Tanya Pinkins. Uh,
Okay.
you know, she played the mother in the movie Above the Rim
Okay. Uh
with
huh.
Tupac. She was Dwayne Martin's mother, played Dwayne Martin.
All
She
right.
just released a movie called Red Pill.
Okay.
So these are independent filmmakers. So
Sure.
with the knowledge and the wealth, and you know, as far as score, because I think we need to get back to that scoring. You know, when you came along, scoring a soundtrack for a movie was big,
Right.
and kind of people kind of gotten away from that a little
Yeah.
bit. They just kind of throwing anything
Right.
in the movie, but people don't realize sometimes that helps the movie.
Yes.
You know, so I would love to, you know, just have them to, you know, reach out to your people, of course,
Sure.
and then, you know, whatever they're working on, and see if you can. I told you, you still got it. You still got that magic in you. You still got that magic in you now.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I would be happy to talk with them and be happy to collaborate with them if that works out. Would love to.
Okay. Well, once
Yeah.
again, thank you for coming on Interruption. Thank you for blessing me with your presence. I want you to stay blessed and stay safe.
Thank you, sir. Same to you. I appreciate it.
All right. Peace out.
All right. Take care.